Hey Bliss-Box fans, today we're going to talk about the M80. If you're not familiar with the controller itself, it's made by 8bitdo. It's one of their wireless models, and you can see there on the bottom image, the controller. Above that's the wireless receiver. And today what we're going to go over is how you can use that controller on any console you want. There are going to be some limitations there, but we're going to cover a bunch of them today. To achieve this, you will need a adapter that's going to get you to USB and a cable that accompanies that wireless receiver. And that's what those next two items are above that. So you have the DB9 cable that will connect to the Gamer Pro Advanced, which is the one in the middle there. Then once you have those two connected, you can connect it to the bridge. And the bridge is going to let you go ahead and connect to other consoles. If you wanted to go to USB, obviously you wouldn't need that, but there are a lot of products available to do that sort of thing. So really what we're going to focus on is how to use this M80 on really any console that you want, all the way from the as far back as Atari and things of those natures. So with that said, let's take a look at what it looks like connected. Okay, so fully assembled, this is the way that looks. From the rightmost end there, that's the dongle, the cable as I spoke about, the adapter, and then the bridge. Now to get that bridge connected to USB, we'll need the USB adapter that comes with it, which looks like that. If you don't need to go to USB, and you wanted to go to a console, there are cables for that. There's one for each console that's available for the bridge, and we are going to cover those. So let's take a look at what this looks like on our first console. Okay, before we demo, I just kind of want to show what this can look like if you have a bunch of cables. In this situation, you probably want to find a way to tidy it up. Here we have the NES top loader, and I just have the cables bunched up into the little cubby hole there. Some people like to go ahead and let them drape and hang to the ground, and other people have other setups where that works a little bit differently. But just keep in mind, there are a few cables there. So in this test app, just wanted to go ahead and show that the buttons work. This test app isn't 100% working. In order to use this, I got to hold down one of the buttons. So let's go ahead and demo that real quick. So here's our controller. I have to hold down that button. And now any of these other buttons I press, the start, select, or the directions, you can see is fully functional. And you can, of course, use two players if you had another dongle. But let's go ahead and load a game. Okay, one of my personal favorites, good old Metroid. And this environment, it's just a couple buttons, so nothing too spectacular here, but the game plays very well. The lag is, I know, on everybody's mind. This situation isn't going to have really any lag to speak of. The amount of lag that's inside the game itself, when it pulls for a controller, is based on the frame rate of the television set. This CRT is running at 60, so you're looking at 16 milliseconds for each pull. That's more than enough time to go read the controller, do the wireless, and come back and give it the payload. So as far as the latency goes, there's really no concern there. But if it did bother you, if you wanted to know what the total time was, I don't know about the 8bitdo controller itself. I don't know how long that takes. You can look that up yourself. But once that controller's read, it's only 800 microseconds that it takes to read from the bridge. So it's under a millisecond anyway. So in case there's anybody out there that's curious about lag, it's really not an issue here. But okay, there was the NES console. Let's take a look at another. All right, here's the Super Nintendo, and this layout here is going to match one for one. So got her down, or the buttons are down, up, or north, south, however you want to call it, east and west. And then you got your bumpers. We got our start and we got our select. So it's fully functional with the D-pad. And it is important to note that when using a controller on a different console, the layout's kind of important. And he wasn't very happy with me for not pressing buttons. So the key point is that the bridge is going to map the thing out as close as possible. We got this diamond layout here, so we have a diamond layout on the 8bitdo. There are other mapping options that you can, of course, program. I'm not going to get into that. There's other videos on that. But as you can see, it's going to lay it out pretty much the same way. So let's check out some gameplay. Okay, specifically chose Mario World to demonstrate something. This diamond pattern on the SNES is that. On the 8bitdo, it's actually rotated a little bit. The point of that is that on the SNES, this is your run button, this is your jump button. Run, jump, and people would usually do this. Some others maybe had a different way to orient their thumb. On this controller, that makes you play like this. So this is going to be our run, this is my jump. It's probably not the most ergonomic way to do that, but again, the goal here is to match this thing up in the way that the layout is familiar. Now you can change those things. You can swap buttons, you can rotate buttons and things like that. You can browse the manual for how to do that or check out the other videos. But I just wanted to make it a point that when you use different controllers and different consoles, you're going to get different feels and results. But honestly, in my opinion, this does work out. You just got to get used to the different hand orientation. I mean, I can play the game just fine. But in some cases, you may want A and B to be the main action buttons, which would make sense. But on the SNES, for this game, you know, it's Y and B. There is a configuration option inside the game, though. You can change back to A and B, and that would allow these buttons to work. So there's a lot of options there. If using it, don't be disappointed. You just got to kind of research the available options. But let's check out another console. Okay, TurboGrafx-16 is a bit of an oddball. If you're familiar with the console, you'll know that there are A and B buttons. There is a 6-button controller. The weird thing about the 6-button controller is they tap the extra buttons to the left because of complications in engineering. So when you have a 6-button controller, the layout actually completely changes. And if you had a 6-button controller like this, you literally wouldn't want these 2 buttons to be your main buttons. That's the way it would look. So if I were to bring up the 6-button controller, to do that, you just press one of the extra buttons. Now you can see what we're looking at here. The A and B buttons are on the right. It moves the extra buttons to the left. So it kind of screws up the layout here a little bit. But if you play the TurboGrafx-16 game, these are going to be your main action buttons that you want to use. On the 6-button controller games, if you wanted the 6-button layout, we have an option for that. It's a custom layout. It's very simple to do. Again, I'm not going to get into that with this video. There are very few games that use 6-button controllers anyways, but if you press any of those 6 buttons, it brings up that controller and the emulator thinks that's what it is. So you do get all the full control there. But the basic layout is going to be these 2 main action buttons. So that'll work for the NES controllers and all those so that it actually works and doesn't break the code. You do have your run button, you do have your select button, and of course your D-pad. So you just need to understand that we're trying to develop this in the most sensible design so that there aren't a bunch of configurations you got to fool with. If you do desire 3 on the bottom and 3 on the top, we can do a custom layout that will achieve that goal for you. But let's check out some gameplay. Alright, load up some bonk here. Basically, it's a 2-button game, so there's not much to be expected here. But I will say that the one main advantage here, other than the wireless controller, is just to be able to hold a nice ergonomic controller. If you don't like the square type controllers. They're a little boxier. A lot of people complain about the TurboGrafx-16 controller. So that's really the only thing that you're getting here. And again, if you're looking for that 6-button layout, this would be another option. You can use your Sega type Saturn and Sega pads for something like that, or even an N64 if you wanted to. And then you'd use that custom mapping. But so here you are. This is the M30 working on the a TurboGrafx 16. But there we have it. Let's check out another console. Okay, let's have a look at the Saturn. Saturn's going to be another one where there's a lot of options out there. So this may not be desirable, but if you happen to have the M80 lying around and you would like to use it, you can. In this situation, we have a 4 to 6 button, and it's actually an 8 because you got the bumpers. So this is another strange one. Here's how we deal with it. D-pad's D-pad. The main 4 buttons are the main 4 buttons, so A, B, X, and Y. In the standard layout, we found that the Z and the C button, we go ahead and leave that to Z and C, because that's usually the way people want a game. But you might want to be able to have these buttons be the L and the R's. And obviously with this controller, these buttons are the same thing. They're not independent buttons. Currently, the firmware allows you to hold the up button down and then press the L. So if you're pressing the C or the Z and then you hit the up, it moves it to the L and the R. Now that can be a feature that we can consider rewriting or adjusting. If it's need be, just give us a shout. We're always up to making our interfaces better. If you wanted to permanently have L and R be L and R, there is that alt map mode. You hold the Z and the C down for a little bit, and then you press your down button, and after 2 seconds, they're permanently mapped to L and R. Now, when you hold up, they don't go back down, so this is a permanent switch. So now you don't have the C and Z; those are L and R's. To go back, you just reverse that mode, but you hold up, and then it puts it back to normal. Again, you can do custom mappings, you can do the button rotations and all those other things if need be, but that's the basics of it with a 4-button style controller, or 6-button, I should say, style controller on the Saturn. Well, let's check out some gameplay. Okay, a little bit of Sonic here. And for me, really the only advantage is the fact that it is wireless. I love the Saturn controller. I would never replace it with anything else. But if that is something that you were looking for, we do have that option to use other controllers. Here we are, M80 on the Saturn, if that is something that you're looking to do. It is nice and comfortable to play with this controller, in my opinion, and you know the mapping is pretty reasonable. All right, let's take a look at something else here. Okay, PlayStation. This is basically a digital console as far as the controller goes. They did give you the analog feature that came out a little bit later, but if you've played PlayStation games, you know that that analog is fake. It's not even real. There are some games that use it, obviously, but most every game you play on that PlayStation, you can use the D-pad for, and it works just fine. So if you're looking for the analog, you know, go check out some analog controllers that work better for that. But if you're looking for a good substitute for the digital portion of it, this is a good choice. The 4 face buttons, again, are just like they would be, just laid out the way they should be. The L and the R go to the back bumper buttons. The default is the lower. If you wanted to switch it, you just enter in that combo. And now you have the upper. It's really that simple. And you can go back to the other one, just like that. This one doesn't have the up button like the Saturn did, so it doesn't switch. But this one's very easy to swap back and forth. You usually don't need all 4 back buttons. If you did, there are custom options, as I mentioned already. You can go ahead and get what you're looking for. But you got your start, your select, and then your face buttons and D-pad. So there you have it. Let's check out some gameplay. Okay, so for the most part, PlayStation games are digital based. There are very few games where you're actually going to have an analog controller that's needed. Most of the analog games just used D-pad anyways, and you could move things around. So it never really mattered which controller you used. And most games that you play on the PlayStation will be fine with digital controllers for that reason. If you did want an analog controller, my advice would be to go with like a GameCube or a Dreamcast or something like that, and use those instead. But again, this video is centered around the M80. So if you're looking for a nice digital controller for the PlayStation and you're not a big fan of that controller, this is definitely a good option. And of course you get that wireless ability. All right, for 3D console, let's talk about the N64. Again, you have your A and B buttons. They're backwards because of the labels on Sega versus Nintendo, but the position is correct. The X and the Y, they're going to map to the C down, the C left. And you do have your L and R. If you want the other two C buttons, you can, you once again use that trick where you hold the L and the R and then you hold down. Now the L and the R are those other C buttons. So if you wanted, you could get those. If you're using a 4-button controller, there's a different method to use those extra C buttons where you can use the D-pad as the C. We won't get into that because this is centered around the 8bitdo controller. But an up puts the mapping back to the L and the R. Okay, and then the other thing, of course, is the D-pad, which would be useless in a game, so we map that to the analog. Now, if you wanted the D-pad, you can hold X and Y down and use a D-pad. As long as the X and the Y are being held down, it will function as a D-pad, but if you let go of that, it's normal operation. So let's check out some gameplay. Okay, and then playing Mario 64 with digital controller actually is not that bad. It's just full range. Analog is all it is, and you get your full 360. It's really not that bad. But like I said, you're going to be missing some buttons in this case. So pick the buttons you want, use your mappings, and there you go. So there you go. There's a rundown on the 8bitdo controller on various consoles. So feel free to give that a try, experiment on your own, and see what you think. Thanks for watching.